What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be very different than anything I've done in the past. I think it's really fun. I think it's a super cool idea, and it's not my idea. I got it from Miiilllky, so we'll give him a shout out when we get into the video. But basically, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to create what I think is a very viable but hardly ever used combination of weapons. I'm going to propose that to you guys, and then if you want, you can try it out for a week and then record your gameplay, edit a video down with good gameplay or funny gameplay or anything you think I would enjoy watching. Submit those on YouTube, and we'll have a hashtag that I can look up to find all those videos. I'll watch some, I'll pick a winner, and then in a week from today, I'll go post that video, and it'll be like a reaction video for me watching it and reviewing the gameplay. And I just think it's a really cool idea because it gets some interaction with the community. It gives me a chance to help you guys out if you're trying to grow a YouTube channel. You can make a good video, and I will show it off to my channel. I just think it's a really interesting, fun idea. So we're gonna try it. I've got all kinds of ideas for fun loadouts that are actually still really good. That's gonna be the main goal, is to have these fun loadouts that are actually really good that nobody's really using. So we'll jump into it here in a second. But as always, if you like the content, don't forget to drop us a sub, a like, and a comment on this video. If you don't like the video, dislike it, but comment and let me know what you didn't like about it. So let's jump into it, and we'll talk about the first TGD Loadout challenge. So before we get into this very first loadout video, I want to give a shout out to the guy whose idea this actually was. So this is Miiilllky. He's trying to grow a YouTube channel and a stream. So his YouTube is Miiilllky with 3 I's and 3 L's. I'll put a link to his channel down below. But again, this was actually his idea, this loadout challenge. He's in one of the Discords with all my friends, and I was asking for suggestions on fun types of videos to do, and this was his idea, and I thought it was awesome. So be sure to go check him out. He's a really funny guy. He's, like I said, he's making good YouTube videos. So I'll link his channel down below, and be sure to check him out. The first loadout challenge that we're going to do is going to be the Cold War AK-47 in a long-range build, specifically with the Susat. The reason that's kind of unique is not very many people use the Cold War AK as a long-range gun right now, and not very many people use the Susat. Basically, it has great TTKs, and the Susat makes it have very, very little visual recoil, so we'll go through that build in a second. But in order to make this a kind of trolly but still really good loadout, we're going to pair that with a Modern Warfare AK-47 with the 5.45 ammo conversion. So basically, we'll be running the Modern Warfare AK as an SMG, and then the Cold War AK as a long-range AR. So this is the build that I would recommend. Crew suppressor, Spetsnaz barrel for maximum recoil control, because the AK does have a lot of recoil. I'll show you guys a picture of the comparison between the Spetsnaz and the Liberator. Obviously, the Liberator gives you the same bullet velocity, which is really nice. But it has no penalty to movement speeds or your aim down sight time, which is really nice. But the Spetsnaz gives you extra damage range as well as horizontal recoil control, and the difference is it really hurts your mobility quite a bit and hurts your ADS a little bit as well. But because the AK has so much recoil, I think it's important to use the Spetsnaz. But I will show you the recoil differences there. Spetsnaz grip, again, this is the same as the Field Agent grip, and this is just, again, because it has lots of recoil. One of the nice things that makes the Susat much more viable on the Cold War AK is that slower rate of fire. So you can get away with using the 45 round mag instead of the 60 round mag, because your damage per mag with the 45 round is going to be basically the same as the other fast firing ARs with the 60 round. So you can get away with that, and that helps your ADS times dramatically, which means you can kind of get away with using the Susat, because the Susat has really bad ADS penalties. And I'll show you again the visual recoil difference between the Susat and the 3X, and you'll see that it's just dramatically better. So this is actually a really, really good build that nobody's using. So it is a little harder to use than like a Krig, of course, but it has the benefit of having better TTKs pretty much everywhere. I'll take you to the TTK chart in a second. And then the second gun, like I said, is the Modern Warfare AK, built as an SMG. So I thought about this a lot. Since it's an SMG, you really need that 5 milliwatt laser sight. This is going to give you much better hip fire. The no stock's going to improve your mobility, but hurt your recoil, but also help hip fire a little bit. And then, of course, 5.45 30 round mag. Unfortunately, it's only 30 rounds, but with sleight of hand, you get ridiculously fast reload times with this thing. Like, literally, it's probably about a second to reload. And it doesn't shoot super fast, so 30 rounds is actually not that bad in terms of damage per mag. Like, it's gonna be quite a bit more damage per mag than the AS Val with 30 rounds is, just because the AS Val shoots faster. Monolithic suppressor just to extend that damage range out and bullet velocity a little bit. And because we have no stock, and the monolithic's the only thing hurting ADS times, and no stock's can actually help your ADS times more than the monolithic is hurting, the ADS times come out pretty good for this. So you get pretty good mobility, really, really good TTKs, decent hip fire, decent sprint to fire times, and a lot of range with a really fast reload time. So again, this is a very, very viable gun for any game mode. And just to clarify, your gameplay with these builds, you don't have to match them exactly, but like specifically in this case, I want you to use the Modern Warfare AK. You can go over how you built it if you want. This is the one I don't really care how you build it. You do what you want with the Modern Warfare AK with the 5.45 30 round. Show off your build, explain why you did what you did. But for the Cold War AK, I'd really like to see you use the Susat just because I think nobody uses this and it's actually really, really good. So you can change up the other stuff if you want. Just explain why you did what you did. But keep the Susat on there and just make sure you use Cold War AK, Modern Warfare AK. As far as perks and lethals and stuff, do whatever you want there. There might be certain builds in the future where I do the same thing, where I will have to specify perks and specify lethals and things just because that'll be part of the build. But in this case, it's just the guns we're going to be wanting you guys to use. So that pretty much goes over everything there. Let's go look at the TTKs, the visual recoil differences, and the actual recoil differences with the Susat and the different barrels. All right, so taking a look at the different barrels with the Cold War AK. Basically, the three you want to look at are the Liberator, Takedown, and Spetsnaz RPK. So basically, the Liberator gives you the same bullet velocity. I think I haven't updated this. I think it is exactly the same as the Spetsnaz RPK, with slightly more vertical recoil, which for the Cold War AK is actually really, really important. But no damage range, and it does penalize your movement speed. And the Takedown barrel is basically replace that bullet velocity gain with a damage range gain. Which is really, really good for like a sniper support build where most of your engagements are going to be pretty close. If you can extend that damage range out to like 40 meters, which I think you can with the takedown barrel, with no ADS penalties, that's huge. So for like sniper support builds, takedown is fantastic. But for your main AR, you're either going to want to use Liberator or Spetsnaz RPK, probably, just for that bullet velocity so you can hit those shots at range. So Spetsnaz RPK basically has the same benefits as the takedown and the Liberator combined, but it also adds in an ADS penalty and more significant penalties to like movement speeds, like sprint speeds is much more penalized, hip fire is more penalized, and ADS movement speeds the same penalized as the Liberator. So you kind of get a little bit of both, but it also slows down the build a bunch. 18 milliseconds doesn't sound like a lot, but when you have that stacking effect of a slowed down gun already, 18 milliseconds is going to be more like 35 or 40 milliseconds probably of penalty. So I really think both of these are great options, the Liberator and the Spetsnaz. Vertical recoil is the main issue with the Cold War AK, and this is already pretty slow. So that's why Liberator is a fantastic choice. So you can decide how you want to build this. If you want to use Liberator or Spetsnaz RPK, they're both really, really good options. All right, so the main reason we're using the Susat is for visual recoil differences. It does have slightly less zoom than the Axial Arms 3X, but it's not that dramatic, especially if you're playing on a higher FOV with affected. If you're on console, the zoom difference will be much bigger because it's basically independent. So let's compare the visual recoil here. I've got the Susat on the left, same build, and the Axial Arms 3X on the right. Let's play this video in the background. You'll see that the Susat just has dramatically less bounce, dramatically less visual recoil. And these builds are exactly the same except the Susat. This is a slow-mo version of that, and you can see that the Susat just has so much less visual recoil and bounce than the Axial Arms 3X. So if you can find a way to build a gun that's still reasonably good in terms of ADS, I think Susat in most cases is going to be much better than the Axial Arms 3X. It just has less zoom. That's one of the big downfalls of it, especially for console players on independent. But yeah, just running through this recoil again here. It's the same. It's crazy how much less visual recoil it has. And this is the same for most guns. I just feel like you can get away with it more on the Cold War AK because mostly because that 45 round mag still has such big damage per mag. So just to quickly go over the TTKs that I've been talking about as we go through the builds. You get the Cold War AK with my build in orange. The magenta is the Krig 6, which I would say is the meta AR right now. Just the best AR because it has no recoil. Cyan is the Modern Warfare AK built as an SMG, as I've shown it. The OTS 9, which is the most dominant SMG up close right now for sure, is this green. And then the Tech 9, which is my favorite, like Type 2 SMG, where it has more range. It's more effective as a sniper support. More effective in just slightly longer engagements than the OTS, is on there in this this darker blue color. So looking at this right away, you can see we're gonna compare the Cold War AK and the Krig first. So Cold War AK and Krig are both being used as our long range gun in this case. You can see Cold War AK wins in TTK. It's just quite a bit faster. The orange line is quite a bit faster up close, about 50 milliseconds, and then at range it's even more faster. So the only place that the Krig is going to win is from 38 out to about 50, which is a pretty big margin actually, and probably a relatively common engagement distance. But if I mean, it's going to be pretty rare that all of your engagement is going to be in that range. Might be somewhat, but anything out past 50, the Cold War AK is dramatically faster again. So just something to keep in mind there. But let's look at the SMGs now. Basically, the Cold War AK has more recoil, harder to control, but you're rewarded for that with much better TTKs. So let's switch over to the SMGs. We've got the AK-47, OTS, and Tech 9. So you can see comparing the two that I would say are the same type of SMG would be the AK-47 from Modern Warfare and the Tech 9, which are both longer range SMGs. Slower time to kills up close, but much more range. Generally easier to control and better bullet velocity. So in this case, the AK is the lighter cyan color. So you can see it has faster TTKs than the Tech 9 all the way out. And it shoots slower than the Tech 9 as well. So that 30 round mag versus the 48 round mag on the Tech 9, damage per mag is probably not that much different. I'm sure the Tech 9 has a little bit more, but you're rewarded for having a lower damage per mag with having better TTKs and more range. If we throw the OTS on there, you're going to see it kills quite a bit faster than the AK-47. And remember, the OTS has that ridiculous 100% headshot neck shot damage. So that makes it just far and above the best aggressive SMG right now. But the Cold War AK, or the Modern Warfare AK with the 5.45 rounds, is actually really, really good right now. It's a lot better than most people give it credit for. But let's go look at the summary stats so we can see how they compare. So you can see the AK shoots a little slower than the Krig. So that 45 round mag goes further. ADS times are going to be a little bit worse on the Cold War AK, but again, you're rewarded for that with good TTKs and no visual recoil. This Krig is built with the Axial Arms 3X rather than the Susat, because I feel like the Krig doesn't need that much help with visual recoil. Mobility is going to be about the same between the Krig and the AK, and that doesn't matter that much at range anyway. Bullet velocity is about the same. Reload time, so the reload times look similar, but really the reload time on the AK is much, much better. I need to get the reload animation cancel times up on the site rather than just the time to being able to fire again. That's a really important stat that I need to get on the site someday soon, but it's just a lot of work, so I haven't done it yet. And then going to look at the Modern Warfare AK versus the other SMGs. You can see much slower fire rate than the OTS, and much slower fire rate than the Tech 9. So you get OTS only has a 40 round mag, the Tech 9 has a 48 round mag, so these have very similar damage per mag, and the AK is about 20% slower firing, so that's actually going to be pretty close to the same damage per mag as these two. So you can get away with that 48 round mag or the 30 round mag on the AK. ADS time on the AK is actually the fastest of the group, which is crazy. Sprint to fire times on the SMGs, of course, are going to be better. That is very important. But we got that down almost as low as we can by using the 5 milliwatt, and these will still be doable numbers. They're just not going to be as good as an SMG. Mobility, of course, the OTS has the fastest mobility in the game. You can see 5.4 meters per second. That's crazy. The AK is not that far behind the Tech 9, though. It's only about 0.1 meters per second slower than the Tech 9, and 0.4 meters per second slower in ADS movement. So really, the mobility is pretty good on that AK that I built. I tried to balance damage range, mobility, and sprint to fire time. So it was I think the AK build that I have for the Modern Warfare AK is actually really good. Hip fire is going to be a little bit better actually on the AK than the OTS with how I built the OTS, just because that 5 milliwatt helps so much. Bullet velocity is going to be way higher than the AK because it's an AR and it has monolithic suppressor. Reload time on the AK is crazy fast with 30 round mag, much faster than the Tech 9, probably similar to the OTS though. So I actually think this is a really good loadout that just nobody's using, so that's why it's going to be featured in my first loadout challenge video. So how do you submit your gameplays for my review? Just go to our Discord. Discord's linked below in the video description. Go to the Discord, join, agree to the rules, and then down in the text channels you'll see TGD Loadout Challenge 1. So come in here, post your gameplay that's uploaded to YouTube. Again, this can be solos, duos, trios, quads, rebirth, doesn't matter. I'll watch them and I'll pick a winner, and then a week from today we'll go through those, and I will basically do a gameplay review of whoever wins. It doesn't have to be like a 40 kill game, like I don't care. It just has to be something entertaining in some way, whether it's funny or a good game or anything. I will consider all of that. It doesn't have to be just amazing gameplay. So let me know what you guys think about this idea. I'm super stoked about it. I think it's really cool for a lot of different reasons that I've outlined. So try out this build. Let me know what you think. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will see you all in the next one, which will be hopefully tomorrow. I don't know if I have time. We'll have one out tomorrow, but that's all for today. So I'll see you then.